Well, let's go back now to our top story. The UK's chief Brexit negotiator, Lord Frost, is urging the European Union to be more realistic as Brexit talks resume with the hope of striking a trade deal. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, is in London for the 8th round of discussions, with Boris Johnson having imposed a deadline of the 15th of October for any deal. Well, joining me now is the Portuguese member of the European Parliament, Pedro Silva Pereira. He's Vice President of the European Parliament and member of the Brexit Steering Group. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. First of all, could I ask you, is Boris Johnson right? Is there a deadline of agreement or no agreement by the middle of next month?
Well, definitely there's a deadline, but the deadline was set by Boris Johnson himself because he was the one to refuse any prolongation of this transition period. And so if we want to have an agreement in force early January, that means that we have to have some time for the ratification process in our parliaments, and therefore an agreement would have to be reached in October, for sure.
If there isn't agreement, what comes into force at the end of the year as far as movement of goods and people is concerned?
Well, if there's no agreement, then the WTO rules will apply, meaning, well, that in any case, the customs union and the belonging of the UK to the single market will end. But more than that, there won't be any bilateral agreement, any arrangement in terms of trade. That means that we will fall into the WTO general rules. This would mean a major issue for trade relations, for the economic relations. We have to recall that the status quo is a high level of economic integration. And so from my point of view, it would be irresponsible not to do what we have to do in order to reach a balance agreement. But for that to happen, of course, such an agreement must ensure common standards for the economic players on both sides, because otherwise we would not be able to ensure open and fair competition.
And from your perspective, what would the impact be of no agreement being in place on January the 1st next year? What would be the impact for Portugal?
Well, it will have an impact, of course. I believe all countries will be affected. But to tell you the truth, I believe that the most serious impact will be for the UK's economy, because, as you know, UK has a strong economic relationship with the European Union. Almost half of the exports of the UK are for the EU. So in case you have a disruption in this relationship, that would be serious from the economic point of view. But we have to bear in mind that what we are trying to achieve here is an unprecedented trade agreement with zero tariffs and zero quotas. You know, the British government used to talk about the Canadian model, because we have a trade agreement with Canada, yes, but this scenario of zero tariffs and zero quotas doesn't exist in any precedented trade agreement. So if we want to have such an ambitious relationship, then of course certain levels of common standards and also some regulatory alignment will have to be ensured. This was recognized in the political declaration.
I understand that, but let's just take this question of state aid. The UK, compared to other European members, is relatively low in terms of the amount of money it puts in state aid. But surely, once the UK has left the European Union, it would be wrong to have the European Union dictating how much a sovereign government could invest in terms of state aid.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But we are not talking about dictating the rules of the other countries. We are just saying that if it is of common interest to have an ambitious trade relationship with zero tariffs and zero quotas, that has to have some consequences. Otherwise, you won't be able to ensure fair competition for players in both sides. This is what we used to call the level playing field, a common level playing field. And this has to be ensured. This was recognized by the UK government in the political declaration, by the way. I believe that in terms of environmental, social and labor standards, this would be possible with a kind of non-regression clause. And in terms of state aid, we need something similar that give us reassurances that you won't have distortions in the competition due to the divergences in the regulations in the UK.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. You're watching All Out Politics.